The proud papa-to-be, otherwise known as the Duke of Cambridge, announcing Kate's pregnancy today.
People have, of course, naturally been saying, when are they going to have baby number 2?
Surprise announcement this morning that Prince William and Duchess Kate are once again expecting baby number 2.
Prince William and Kate announced they are adding another royal to the family.
The Duchess of Cambridge has been admitted to King Edward VII Hospital tonight with severe morning sickness.
The Duchess of Cambridge showed off a teeny tiny baby bump.
New royal baby really means that the monarchy is going to be even more secure than it is at the moment.
They clearly want to get on with it. And yes, another baby due.
But take a look at this. The 8-month pregnant Kate looks like she's clutching her bump.
But it's not quite just another baby. This is a baby who is going to be our monarch one day.
It's great news. Early days, but I'm hoping things settle down. And
his royal family say they're delighted with the news that Prince William and his wife Kate are expecting their second baby.
Prince William and Kate are about to move into a big countryside home, which royal insiders say they will fill with even more children.
A pregnant Kate was pretty in pink for her last official engagement before she welcomes her second baby.
Whether the baby girl then has younger brothers in the future, she will be able to succeed to the throne.
So the Duchess of Cambridge is pregnant with her second child. It's news that we've been waiting for.
The newest member of the royal family will replace Prince Harry as fourth in line to the throne.
Kate has hinted in the past that Prince William wants at least 3.
And at every function, she rocks that pregnancy pretty well.
Saturday evening, the family left the hospital as crowds of well-wishers cheered for Britain's newest royal.
As the world mimics the royal family, they are adapting to modern parenting.
Here's a photograph from 2015 that most people scrolled past without a second thought. Catherine, visibly pregnant, waving from a hospital doorway, smiling the way she always smiles for the cameras. What almost nobody knew at the time was that behind that smile sat a decision. A quiet one. One that would shape how she raised her children inside an institution that had never really been asked to bend before. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. According to royal author Robert Jobson, Catherine didn't wait to be told how motherhood would work inside the firm. She decided first and told the family second. The year was 2015. Catherine was pregnant with Charlotte, her second child, and George was not yet 2 years old. This was still early in her royal life, barely 4 years married into a family with centuries of protocol behind it. And according to Jobson's reporting, this is the moment she quietly set terms, not written terms, not a formal document sitting on a desk at Buckingham Palace. Jobson has been clear about that distinction. What Catherine established was closer to a private understanding, a set of boundaries she intended to hold on to no matter how the pressure from public life pushed against them. And here's the detail that tends to surprise people. Catherine didn't deliver this message herself, at least not directly to the Queen. She went through William. Think about what that says. A young mother, still finding her footing in an institution built on formality, chose her husband as the conduit rather than facing Queen Elizabeth II across a table. Some might read that as caution. Others might call it strategy. Either way, it worked. William, according to Jobson, explained his wife's position plainly. Catherine wanted room to grow into her role at her own pace. She needed time to adjust to a life that had no instruction manual for people who married into it. And she wasn't interested in being slotted into a checklist of royal duties handed down before she'd even had the chance to define the role for herself. That's the first rule. The second was more specific, and arguably more important. Catherine insisted on her full maternity leave, not a symbolic pause between appearances. Real time, away from cameras, away from the rota of engagements that usually pulled royal mothers back into public view within weeks. She wanted that time protected. Hers, not shared with the institution, not negotiated down by a private secretary's calendar. And underneath both of those terms sat a third, quieter one. Family came first, not second to duty, not balanced evenly against it. First. To understand why this mattered, you have to look at what came before her. Princess Anne returned to public duties within weeks of having Peter and Zara. Sarah Ferguson, for all the criticism she later faced, was pushed back into engagements almost immediately after Beatrice was born, and complained about it for years afterward. Even Diana, who fought harder than any royal mother before her to keep William and Harry close, still operated inside a system that expected her back on the circuit within a matter of months. There was no template for a mother simply saying, no, not yet, not on that timeline. That's the gap Catherine was stepping into. Not a blank page exactly, but a pattern of women who'd tried to push back against palace expectations and been worn down by it. Diana pushed. The institution pushed back harder. What made 2015 different wasn't that Catherine wanted something new. Mothers before her had wanted the same thing. What was different was how she asked and who she asked it through. Now picture where this request landed. Queen Elizabeth II had spent 7 decades building a monarchy defined by service before self. Her own children grew up largely in the care of nannies, while she carried out the business of the crown. Charles, famously, spoke about the emotional distance that created. So when a 33-year-old duchess, married in, not born into it, asked for something different, that wasn't a small ask. That was Catherine, quietly asking the institution to bend around her family rather than the other way around. What's remarkable, based on Jobson's account, is that it worked, not through confrontation, through calm insistence delivered secondhand and never revisited publicly. Some royal commentators online have pointed to this moment as the real beginning of what people now call the Wales model of parenting. School pickups, holidays kept sacred, a level of hands-on involvement rarely seen from senior royals before her. Others have framed it differently, suggesting Catherine simply had the advantage of marrying into the family during a more media-conscious era, one where the palace itself understood that clinging to old habits could cost them public goodwill. Both readings can be true at once, but there's a deeper layer to this that Jobson's reporting only hints at. Consider the timing. 2015 wasn't a random year. The Cambridges, as they were known then, were already navigating a monarchy in transition. The Queen was in her late 80s, Charles was stepping into more responsibility. And here was Catherine, a step removed from the direct line of succession pressure that would later fall on George, quietly negotiating space for herself before that pressure arrived. Whether that was foresight or instinct, the effect was the same. By the time George turned 5, then 6, then 7, the pattern was set. School runs, sports days, a level of visible parental presence that stood in contrast to how William himself remembered his own early childhood, raised largely by Diana, yes, but still within a household bound by more rigid royal expectation than the one Catherine was now building. Look at how the family actually structured their week once the rule took hold. Anmer Hall in Norfolk became the real base, not Kensington Palace, a deliberate choice to keep the children away from London's press pack for as much of the year as possible. William commuted. Catherine scaled back her own public schedule during school terms rather than the other way around. Term time engagements were arranged around drop-offs and pickups, not the reverse. Palace aides have described a working pattern where Catherine's diary was built around the school calendar first and royal duties filled in around it second, a complete inversion of how previous generations had operated. And that's when things changed for the wider family too. Because once one royal mother successfully drew a boundary and held it, the door opened, at least a little, for the idea that duty and family didn't have to compete quite so directly. Years later, this moment would echo in ways nobody could have predicted in 2015. When Catherine's cancer diagnosis became public in 2024, the same instinct resurfaced. She stepped back from public life entirely, prioritizing time with George, Charlotte, and Louis over any pressure to reassure the public through appearances. Palace watchers noted it immediately. This wasn't new behavior. It was the same rule she'd set nearly a decade earlier, just under far more serious circumstances. Critics were quick to highlight how differently this might have played out a generation earlier. Diana, for all her instincts toward warmth and hands-on parenting, never had the institutional space to simply disappear from view for months at a time without inviting relentless speculation. Catherine, by contrast, had already built the precedent. The public had already accepted that family came first for her. So when she needed that boundary most, it was already there, waiting. Compare the two moments side by side, and the through line is hard to miss. In 2015, the ask was about privacy during a healthy pregnancy, a request that could easily have been dismissed as a young royal being precious about her time. In 2024, the ask was about privacy during chemotherapy, something no one could reasonably argue against. But the mechanism was identical. Family first, communicated firmly, protected without negotiation. The difference nearly a decade made was that nobody in the palace or in the press treated it as unusual the second time. That's what a precedent actually buys you. Not permission in the moment, but the absence of a fight the next time you need it. Was this really just about maternity leave back in 2015? Or was Catherine, without fully realizing it, laying the groundwork for a kind of protection she'd need far more urgently later? Jobson's book doesn't claim she saw that far ahead, but the pattern is hard to ignore in hindsight. There's also the question of how Queen Elizabeth II actually received this. Jobson's account doesn't record a dramatic confrontation, and there's a reason for that. By most descriptions of her later reign, the Queen had grown more flexible than the institution she represented, willing to let a new generation shape their roles differently than she had, so long as the core duties still got done. Catherine's terms didn't ask her to skip those duties. They asked for boundaries around when and how they'd be carried out. That distinction likely made the difference between a request that could be granted and one that would have caused real friction. By the time Louis was born in 2018, the rule wasn't even a topic of discussion anymore. It had simply become how things worked. Maternity leave, full stop. School pickups treated as fixed points, not flexible ones. Family holidays kept largely out of the public eye. What started as a boundary, Catherine had to establish through her husband in a private conversation, had, within a few years, become an unspoken standard for how the future queen consort would balance motherhood against monarchy. There's a broader story here about the monarchy itself, one that goes beyond one family's parenting choices. Institutions like the crown don't usually change because a committee decides it's time. They change because one person quietly refuses to accept the old terms, and nobody higher up decides the fight is worth having. Queen Elizabeth II reportedly picked her battles carefully in her final decade on the throne. She'd watched the monarchy nearly lose the public after Diana's death, and she understood, perhaps better than anyone else in that family, what it cost the institution when a mother's private life and her public duty collided badly. Letting Catherine hold this boundary may have looked from the outside like a small concession. From the inside, it may have been one of the clearer signs that the Queen had learned something from the 1990s that she wasn't willing to relearn the hard way twice. And there's a generational thread worth pulling on too. Charles has spoken publicly, if carefully, about the distance he felt from his own parents growing up, a product of an era where royal duty simply came first, without much discussion. William, by most accounts, was determined not to repeat that pattern with his own children. Catherine's insistence on protected family time gave him permission, in a sense, to build the kind of household he'd always said he wanted. So while the terms were hers, the outcome shaped both of them. And by extension, how George, Charlotte, and Louis have grown up compared to the two generations before them. And that's really the heart of what Jobson uncovered. Not a single dramatic moment, but a quiet negotiation that reshaped expectations for an entire generation of the family. Catherine didn't ask permission in the way royal wives historically had. She stated her terms once through William, and then lived by them consistently enough that nobody felt the need to challenge them again. Whether history remembers 2015 as the year Catherine simply asked for maternity leave, or as the year she quietly redefined what a working royal mother owes to the institution versus her own children, may depend on how the next chapter of her role unfolds, particularly as George moves closer to the responsibilities that will eventually define his own life inside the firm. It's worth sitting with the fact that none of this required a headline at the time. No statement from Kensington Palace, no interview where Catherine explained her reasoning to a journalist. The entire arrangement lived in a private conversation between a husband and his grandmother, passed along on his wife's behalf, and it held for nearly a decade without anyone outside that circle knowing the terms existed until Jobson wrote them down. That's arguably the most telling detail in the whole story. Not what the rule was, but how quietly it was won. If this kind of behind-the-scenes royal history is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe to Royal Archives, okay, because there's a lot more from Jobson's reporting on Catherine that we haven't covered yet.